Welcome back to A Faster Me. You're joining us here at the second in the Majestic series. We are at Rosena Ranch. This course is notorious for its winds and
Bad weather.
yeah. But today was cold, but luckily the wind was not too significant. There was a little bit of a change from our normal anticipated start. We were supposed to start after the Category 5 group and the Collegiate C and D men, and the women were a couple minutes after, but they told us at the last minute that we were all racing together, and I found out that it was due to a motorcycle official who was stuck up in the mountains in the snow, so having a lot of snow this time of year. So the mindset definitely changes racing with a much bigger field and with the men. So you just wanted to try to draft as much as possible. So due to the increase in size of the field, there's a lot more protection if you can hang with the group, because the women's field, I think with all the categories combined, there was just about 16 riders, and so that doubled or tripled.
Yeah, as you can see up in the top left, it is freezing out here. Yeah, it was super cold, hands, feet, all that. It's only 48 degrees according to the temperature gauge. But yeah, it's a big field, and with the collegiate men in there, it made it really fast to start off.
So I was trying to pick the wheels I wanted to follow, and to my right is Anya Chen. She is an amazing young rider and does a great job drafting, holding on. She actually won our category, so
Yeah,
giving it away early. But she stays with the peloton the entire time and ends up lapping the field of most of the rest of the women riders and a lot of men as well.
yeah, Anya did a great job, just drafting and surfing wheels, and I think she ended up, kind of like in the top 15 of overall riders. I don't remember her exact position, but yeah, she was pretty much in the top 15, crossing the line. There's two guys off the front that kind of had their own race going, but other than that, yeah, she did a great job in the peloton.
And this first climb is just brutal. So you can see I'm already starting to lose touch with the group. I was a little bit indecisive in the wheels that I was trying to hold on to. But here, able to kind of catch back up to the very back of the peloton. But after this U-turn, everyone, takes off, and it's just a struggle to stay connected. A lot of surging. This hill is not as brutal as the one on the other side. So there goes Marlena, and you see here I'm doing a pretty high VO2 effort of well over 300 watts, and I just
Definitely anaerobic effort.
um, could not quite hang on. So
Yeah, that's one of the biggest differences. A lot of women are faster than some of the men, like in sustained effort, stuff like that. But one of the big differences between like the open races and the women races are the surges. And it's not that it's surgy or not, it's the amount of power that the guys put out coming from a stop. And that's what sometimes will catch the people that have less power out. Uh,
And there's Jules going by me from Major Motion. Her and I worked together. She was supposed to have a teammate out here, but Lisa wasn't feeling too well this morning, and so Jules is out here alone. So we're trying to kind of formulate our plan of working together and taking pulls and finding out which way the wind's going, because I've done this race a number of times, and we've had quite a lot of critical breakdown of just, pulling off into the wind, sometimes finding out which direction the wind is going. But if you pull off into the wind, that saves the rider pulling through from having just a little bit less effort.
Yeah, and just another reminder, when you're working with someone, you want to pull through gradually. You don't want to surge. Like here, Jules pulls through a little bit too hard, and you see Ellen has to spike to almost 400 watts to get back on the wheel. Um, if you're trying to drop somebody, that's fine. That's what you do. But if you're trying to make it, any sustained efforts of teamwork, you want to pull through gradually, and that saves everyone's leg.
Yeah, and you can see when I caught back up to the draft, I was only doing less than 100 watts for a short time, which is a nice little break. I was trying to just keep it at steady around 200 watts because I know that that's kind of my threshold effort, and I figured this race would be maybe about an hour. I was hoping we could do some work together. This little hill going into the start finish line is just brutal. So if you're
Yeah.
sprinting for the finish, it's never a time I do real well.
Yeah, and just another point on when you're taking pulls. If you're the one that just did the pull and you're trying to rotate back to for the breather, keep your legs moving. Don't coast. Keep moving until you're back in the draft again. That can just prevent from doing like big surges.
In this course, some of you may be familiar, but it's just a out and back with 2 U-turns. So this U-turn is, feels a little bit less challenging. It's a little bit flatter on this side of the course. The one on the opposite side has a pretty significant downhill, and then coming out of it, you have a little bit of a climb. So I think, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, there was a crash the first lap. I think it might have been 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, that was 2 years
Michelle,
ago
I
in
think.
the rain. Yeah,
That was pretty.
yeah, it was on the first U-turn. There was a crash. So, and then last year, I believe it was last year, the first Rosena Ranch when it was super windy. A junior got blown off the bike and crashed as well. And luckily, like we said at the beginning, there wasn't hardly any wind today. I mean, it's a little breezy out there, and obviously when you're racing, there's some crosswind. But this was a very mild day for the wind for this circuit in this area. Also, yeah, hopefully everybody's okay in this race. At the end of this race, there was a group, like the lead peloton was kind of sprinting for the finish, and there was a big crash at the end. I don't know if the 2 riders bumped first or if someone hit the guardrail first. Not the guardrail, but the fence up there that's by the start finish line. I don't know if the riders bumped first and then hit the fence, or hit the fence first and then bumped into each other or whatever. But a young lady and a young man was hurt pretty bad.
And unbeknownst to me at the time, I did get a little piece of that on the very end of the video, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to just see that, but made a pretty horrific sound, and unfortunately, the riders were not, doing so well when left in an ambulance, so we just hope everyone is okay. But, it's the unfortunate part of the sport is the crashing.
Yeah, so you and Jules have a pretty good rhythm now that you guys are switching off and taking turns. You guys are pushing pretty hard though. You're still having pretty high watts. I know the speed looks low, but this hill right there, I think it gets up to almost 8 or 9% at its highest. So yeah, you're definitely guys putting in a good effort here.
Yeah, it was painful. This hill was by far my worst spot on the the course. It's just a really tough spot to be in, and Jules and I were still kind of working out our rhythm and flow of the pulls we were taking, and just kind of learning each other because everyone has different strengths, and sometimes different size riders pull differently up the hill, downhill, which you'll be able to see later with a young collegiate rider that I'll work with. And then it's such a nice spot when you get to the top of the hill and then have a little bit of a rest going into the U-turn.
Yeah, the U-turn is very critical though, because once you hit the U-turn, it's again a nice uphill kick again that you have to really accelerate out of. And for this U-turn, you want to take a wide approach here. See, Ellen took a nice wide approach. You see, Jules came in shallow, and see how she has to slow down to make the turn, and Ellen's accelerating out. So you want to take a wide approach, have a late apex. Hopefully everyone knows what an apex is, but you want to have a late apex and get on the pedals as fast as possible to get momentum back up this hill.
And another thing that I was working on was utilizing the entire road. So instead of kind of hugging the right like you do, when you're riding on the road with vehicles, you know, kind of staying to the middle when it is more convenient, can cut a little bit of the lap off. And Jules did tell me afterwards, because we talked a little bit about the U-turn, that she had to do a pretty significant effort to catch me, and it really taxed her legs.
Yeah, and that was all because of the turn entry. So really, you want the entry that allows you the best exit. because it's not going into the turn that's important. It's the speed you carry out of the turn and how fast you can get back to pedaling again. So, we kind of talk about this. We talk about cornering pretty much every race, but you never want to be, if you have a left hand turn, you never want to be to the left side of the course. So it's kind of like the opposite. If you have a left hand turn, you want to start it wide on the right side of the road, have a late apex turn that's basically turning in as late as possible, and that will give you the kind of the straightest line or the most speed that you can carry out of the turn.
It's so crazy because I know this in my head, and you saw I was able to have a little bit later turn on the last corner. But even knowing it, I would start wide and I would still turn in too soon, even though I was telling myself, don't go yet, don't go
Yeah.
yet. But there's something about it that makes you want to turn in even before you need to.
Well, a lot of times it's where your eyes are. If your eyes are on the ground, it throws off your sense of speed. If you pick your eyes up, kind of like level with the horizon, it slows everything down. And anytime you have your eyes, like right now, if you even just look at the lines on the ground, it looks a little faster. If you look up to the horizon out there, it slows even the video down a little bit.
And you can see that this race is just completely broke up. So you see some groups of people, a lot of people off the back. Jules and I have a nice little rhythm here. The wind is coming from um, the left side, so we're kind of now
And I
have a
thought it was
little
the
bit
right
of
side.
rhythm. Yeah, no, it was a crosswind as well, but um, yeah, this hill is a killer.
I mean, you guys are doing a good job. You have a long way to go. So, yeah, I mean, again, you have to last basically the whole 22 miles or whatever it is. So, I think you guys have a really high pace. You averaged over 200 watts for the race. So, yeah, it was a good effort.
And it's really nice to have somebody to work with, because when you are out here completely by yourself with the cold, the wind, the rain, whatever, we've had it all, it gets to be pretty miserable. But when you have someone to work with, it gives you something else to kind of think about and take your mind off. This was also a nice section coming into the the downhill, and you'd be shouting something every
Yeah.
time, so I could count on, hey, what's going on? What am I going to get this time?
Yeah, just always, when you're supporting your family or loved ones or whatever, teammates racing, sometimes you want to just give them a little bit of information. Let them know how big the gap is to the riders in front of them or to the riders behind them. Let them know if there's a group that they can work with to save some energy, or, just what they have to do to improve the race. A lot of times people just yell like go or harder or whatever, but sometimes they need some actual tangible information that they can use.
And sometimes you hear that information, and sometimes you have no clue what they're saying. You might hear a time and not know what that time was from, if it was riders in front of you, behind you, someone to work with or not work with. Um, so, yeah, I think what I heard the most was work together, because
Yeah.
with somebody. So
Well, yeah, that's
that's
the
what we
key.
were doing.
Yeah. Anytime, so on a race like this, I mean, either way it goes, when you're riding solo, it's slower than riding with the group. Obviously, if you're way faster than the other people in the group, sometimes it's better to go off, but you'd have to be way faster, and that group wouldn't have caught you to begin with. So, and if you're catching a group that is way in front of you, then obviously you're way faster than them and you keep going. But if it's someone that gradually catches you, or you gradually catch them, then sometimes it benefits you to work together.
One thing that I was looking forward to, just in starting with a much larger group, is you can actually work with those riders even though you're not scored together. So when a group goes off in front of you, I think, like they were scheduled to go off at 8 and we were at 8:02. If you catch those riders in the other group, you're not allowed to work with them. So you have to just go by them, which is unfortunate sometimes, because when you're off.
Well, let's clarify that. So this was a mass start. Everyone can work together. They all started at the exact same time, but they're scored separately. Now, if you catch riders, you can work with them as long as you are on the exact same lap. So if you are being lapped, or if you are lapping someone, then you cannot work with them. This is in road races and circuit races. You can't work with them at all. You can't draft them. You can't get a benefit from them. Nothing like that. As long as either you are lapped or you're lapping them. You cannot work together. Other than that, you can ride with whoever you want when it's a mass start like this and everyone started from the grid at the same time. And that's different than crit races. Crit races are a little bit different. So on a crit race, you can jump back into the peloton when you get lapped, but you should be riding to the back because you cannot interfere with riders that are ahead of you, and you cannot get assistance from them or give assistance to anyone that's on the lead lap. So you can't draft your friend, you can't pull or lead out your friend in a crit race, but you can get back on the back of the peloton and finish the crit with the lead group if you're lapped. In road races and circuit races, you cannot do that because what happens is you end up getting a pace benefit from the faster group, and obviously that's not fair to your competitors or whatever the case may be. So there's a little bit of a difference between road and circuit races and crit races, and the only time that should not be the case, the officials should announce it ahead of time that lapped riders can work with the lead, which they're never going to do. It's part of the USA cycling rules, so I don't think they're ever going to do that, even though we've seen it in other races and stuff like that. So it's just something for people to be aware of, because in some cases you can be disqualified, others there can be a time relegation, and it happens almost all the time that there's like a big road race or circuit race just because people aren't aware and they jump on whenever they can.
Yeah, and here you see I lost Jules. I thought she was with me, and she said she was until she wasn't. So, sometimes that happens, and so because I didn't realize I had lost her, I just continued on, and then here I pick up another rider that I caught pretty quickly, but I said, "Hey, jump on if you can." His name is Jackie, and it's going to be a two-man show for most of the time, but he was able to jump on, even though I caught him pretty quickly. And sometimes when you're popped, it's just easy to like lose motivation. It's hard out here, you're suffering, but when you find somebody to work with, it kind of gives you a new sense of purpose. You're able to kind of work a lot harder oftentimes with somebody else than you are able to by yourself.
For sure. And Jackie's situation's a little bit different because Jackie was well up the road, so he kind of blew up and then had a chance to recover, and that's why he was able to work with you. It's kind of a different scenario than what I explained earlier, like if you catch someone really fast, just keep going. This is a little bit different scenario. I'm talking about like when it's people that started with you and they're in your group. It's a little different because he's in the collegiate men's group. So like sometimes your speed may be similar, but your energy systems are a little bit different. The way you make power is different, and you'll see that by how much power he has on these short climbs compared to Ellen's power, and then he's not as fast on the flats.
Yeah, it's very different, and it's something to look at where you're at in the race also. So we had a long way to go. I think there's 6 or 7 laps left of a 10-lap race. At some point that gets cut down when we do get lapped, but it's very different. Like if you catch someone with maybe 2 laps to go and the pace is different, that may be something like you were talking about of going by if you catch them quickly.
Right.
Or if they're in the same category because you're competing. But if we're out here together, but I know for sure I'm not competing against Jackie or the collegiate men. We're going to be scored different. It's not going to matter really unless you're really trying to just beat the group you're with, but it's not going to matter who crosses the finish line first of the 2 of us. We're going to be in the same positions. So here we're kind of developing our style of when to work together. So I was doing a little bit of coaching, not like I'm an expert, but I found out after this was just his second race, so we were able to get a pretty good rhythm down. And so I learned on this climb that he's a lot stronger going uphill than I am, and so then I tell him, hey, it makes sense if you can pull us up the climbs, I'll try to carry us on the downhill, because I think I had about good 15 or 30 pounds on him. I can't remember.
Probably 25 pounds. But,
yeah, I think
25.
he said 115 and I'm 145, so I think that equals 30.
Yep.
My math is not so good. I did not go to school.
That's a solid 30.
I did not go to school to
Yeah, just
to
a
major
little fun fact for me and Ellen, for those of you that follow our channel. No matter what we do, no matter how we work out, how we eat, we're not together all the time. We have different lives, different jobs, all that kind of stuff, we are almost always exactly 30 pounds apart from each other, and we weigh ourselves every single day, probably twice a day, at least twice a day, in the morning, at night. Yeah, and we are almost always 30 pounds apart from each other.
And it's pretty funny because we really don't care that much about the weight and not trying to gain or lose. I mean, our whole kind of lifestyle change was for fitness and not about losing weight at all.
Right.
Um, so I
But
think we
yeah.
gained a little bit of weight in the off season, just doing a little more lifting and maybe a little bit more eating. I don't know. But we gained just a little bit of weight, but it is pretty interesting.
Yeah. And it's weird because we can wake up and be, I don't know, I might get on the scale. If I'm 172, she's going to be like 142, maybe 143, stuff like that. And if I'm 180, she's going to be closer to 150. And it's just crazy. And we don't even eat the same meals all the time either.
And here you see pretty effortlessly Jackie is dropping me. And he had some good supporters. I knew his name because they were cheering for him on the side of the road a few times. So
I'm certain it all helped too, because before you started working with him, he was looking pretty down, like like the hell with this, I'm done. But then after you guys started working together, kind of gave him a little boost of energy. As you can see, he's looking back, not wanting to drop you. So yeah, I mean, obviously he's going faster than he was because obviously you caught him, and you're going a little faster too when he's pulling you up the hills.
yeah, so this actually is the fastest this race has ever gone in my mind because I worked with somebody almost the entire race. Worked with Jules, and then that same, half a lap caught Jackie. Worked with him the remainder of the time, and most of the other times I have been out here suffering at least for a few laps completely by myself. And the weather conditions have been worse. It is painful. We've even had the race shortened at times, and it still felt much longer before
Yeah.
in this race.
So I had a question on that U-turn. Did you hit your brakes during the turn?
No,
Are you certain?
I did.
Because it looks like you had a wide approach. You're carrying decent speed. You turned in, and then you slowed completely down and turned even tighter. Which honestly, your approach was perfect. Your turn in was pretty good. But if you weren't on your brakes, because you should get your braking done before your turn in.
Right. Yeah,
If you
I did.
turn
I
in, you
never.
can just coast all the way through, and you should be running wide on your exit. And you turn like really tight left, which slows your speed down. You can come in with slightly more speed and run it all the way to the right side of the curb on the exit. That carries more speed.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I started to almost get worse in the turn, but I definitely did not hit my brake. So I don't know why. Maybe I turned in a little bit, or
Well, your bike does slow down also as it gains lean angle. So that just might be it. It gains friction. Tires gain friction as you turn, and as you gain lean angle. So it does slow down. So even without hitting your brakes, you will still slow down. But I think if you keep your bike a little bit more upright and purposely go to the outside curb after you turn in, you'll carry a lot more speed.
yeah, something to be practiced for sure.
Yeah, and with that note, you do err on the side of caution because there's no sense of running wide and crashing or running off the road or anything like that. It's just you have a huge margin to work with. You have 20 feet to work with. Once you get down to like 2 feet, then it's like, okay, I'm gonna be cautious and not use up my extra 2 feet there.
Yeah, so this is a nice little section of recovery. You can still, have maybe decent speed going downhill, and then it kind of flattens out, and then you start to feel the hill again. So here we've worked our rhythm, and Jackie comes by to take us up the hill.
Yeah, and this is a blessing right here. I know. So here's another little fun fact for people. As you can see, Jackie's pulling up the hill, but Ellen's still using 300 watts, right? Or, above 250. And here's what people don't understand. When you ride with people, everyone wants to pull on the downhill. And they say, oh, I don't want to be the one pulling uphill using my energy. But honestly, pulling uphill is better. It's a more benefit for you because going uphill, everyone has to use energy. As you just saw, Ellen was in his draft still using almost 300 watts. He's probably doing more than 300 watts, or maybe the same because he's a little lighter. But both people, no matter who's drafting or not, have to use a decent amount of energy uphill. But now in the draft, when the speed is higher, there's more wind resistance and there's a bigger draft effect going downhill. So now Jackie, even though he's going downhill, he's getting much more of a draft benefit right now than Ellen did when he was pulling uphill. But it's funny because you'll see people say, I don't want to be the one pulling uphill. I would much rather pull uphill, even though I can't climb to save my life, if I'm going to get a draft benefit on the downhill.
Well, and the another thing is, depending on your size, you can have such a great distance that is, um, I don't know, happens when you're climbing uphill. And likewise downhill. If someone's a much larger rider downhill and they break away, it's hard to catch them. And if someone is, maybe smaller and can do a whole lot more work uphill, there can be a huge gap created.
Correct.
So those are just some things, and then it's power to weight. So there's a lot of different factors that go into that.
Yeah, and
But
power to weight mainly is a factor uphill. It's not as much power to weight on the flats. It's raw power on the flats. That's why a lot of bigger guys can go fast. That's why time trialists are bigger. That's why a lot of your domestiques are bigger. Because on the flats, it doesn't matter as much. It's more about raw power and holding momentum.
and this Jackie did this a couple laps. Just he stood up, but he wasn't trying to go really hard. It was just a nice smooth effort. And you can see him look back pretty consistently to make sure I'm with him. And if he wanted to, he could have just rode away from me on this hill. Now, maybe I could have rode away from him other times. I don't know. But the hill, this was just the moment that was such a struggle for me. You see my heart rate's almost up to 170.
Yeah, because that's what I was saying. You're getting pulled up the hill, but you still have to use close to 300 watts just to keep momentum. And Jackie, from watching the race when you guys were out there, Jackie struggled in the turns sometimes. So on the U-turns, you would come away with a big gap, and then he'd have to accelerate to catch back up to you again. So
Yeah.
let's see this next U-turn that you end up getting.
And there's us getting lapped by the front two riders.
Yeah, those guys were really strong. I believe a UCLA rider and a UC Davis rider. Can't remember. I think one of their name was Andrew, but they did a lot of good work, and the UCLA rider ended up winning the sprint on the finish to win it.
And they came out of nowhere, and they just kind of flew by us. They didn't announce themselves or anything, but it was okay, and then they're just gone.
Yeah, let's see this U-turn, how you take it, and maybe
Okay.
I can explain what I'm trying to say a little bit when we see you. So you're on the right side of the road, which is perfect because obviously you're going to be making a left-hand turn. You want to try to turn as late as possible, with your head all the way up and around, not looking at the ground. You don't need to look at the cone. You're not going to hit the cones. So head up. Let's see where you turn in at and how far you take the exit on the outside. So you turn in a little bit early, but it's good here. But now you want to run it all the way to the other side. And see how you stay tight here? You want to be closer to that white line on the other side of the road, and it will carry a little bit more momentum there.
Yeah, I definitely have learned, and I used a lot more consistent power in the turns. But even though I just know it in my head, and I knew I was turning a little too soon. So
Good.
here is the main peloton,
Yeah.
I think, going by.
Yeah, that guy was trying to bridge to the front two. He wasn't successful though, bridging. He gets pulled back into the peloton, and I think right as you guys, after you go down the downhills, when the peloton's going to pass you.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's coming up, and you guys are trying to move to one side, but you end up getting swarmed on both sides.
Yes, I think I was saying, hey, let's stay on the right hand side, and we did pull over, but yeah, people passed on that side as well.
Yeah, and this is kind of the scenario we were talking about, like when the peloton is lapping them here in road races and road races and circuit races, they cannot jump back in with this group. They have to move to the side, let them go by, and then continue their race. In a crit race, though, you can get onto the back of the peloton. You just cannot interfere or help the leaders.
Yeah, it's very confusing, and sometimes, I've been very confused because I've heard a lot of different things. Sometimes the officials make different decisions
Yeah.
on different things, and they say it's up to official discretion. So we actually just looked up the rules, and we're reading the USA Cycling rules because you just want to know the right thing and then
Well,
follow it, and then you hope those things are just enforced consistently.
correct. And for us at PAA, we we like to teach our racers the right thing. We like to teach our racers the rules, and we have to represent our sponsors. So we try to make good use of that and just educate our team. This is another reason why we do videos. We're all learning, and we want to share what we learn as well. But yeah, it gets confusing, and the only time technically they're supposed to do it any different is if they announce it again, like I said at the beginning. But they most likely aren't going to do that because it's part of when it's a USA Cycling sanctioned race, you go by USA Cycling rules.
And there, I think I was telling Jackie, "Hey, let's pull to the right of the road because the peloton was coming, and a few
Yeah,
riders passed us on the right, but most of them passed on the left."
yeah,
We do just a little less effort here to let them go by because we are not in contention. We're down a lap. That's another thing. I have always erred on the side of caution.
yeah.
Like
Because
not knowing exactly, I'd rather follow the rules correctly, even if maybe I could work with someone. And that was something like not knowing exactly if you're lapping somebody or if someone was just falling off the back.
yeah,
It's hard to know when someone is out there
yeah, everyone's
by
just riding
themselves.
hard. Everyone's just riding hard. And that's the thing about road races and circuit races. Like, you don't know what position people are in sometimes. So if it's an individual passing you, you don't know if that person's off the back or if they're the front of a breakaway. But
Hmm.
yeah, either way, it's all good. We're just trying to make sure everyone knows and just educate everyone on how that goes a little bit. And yeah, usually in other races when you have a separate start, like if they go off 2 minutes in front or whatever, you can't work with anyone that has a different number plate than you. So if your numbers are in the 400s, you can only work with 400s. If there's 100s, they can only work with 100s and stuff like that. But it just depends. But anyway, back to the racing.
Yeah, so here, just getting back in our rhythm. Now we have a pretty good standard. We've been together a few laps, and so we kind of know our roles and our place here at Rosena Ranch. So,
Yeah, I think honestly, you guys probably did the best job of working together out of everyone that was kind of off the back. Because, and I don't mean off the back, I just mean separated from the main group. Because, and maybe it's because you're so far separated, and you're not that far back, to be honest with you. You guys are in between the chase group. You're right after the chase group that's chasing the main peloton. But I think the thing is, you guys did a really good job of working together. Um, Partly because in some of the other groups, uh, when you have a long distance to finish, sometimes people are just so antsy and they want to attack, which is great when you have that competitive spirit and you just want to attack. And eventually the group ends up falling apart or someone just refuses to do work.
and that may have been the chase group with Marlena in it. So I think I yelled to her one time. It's easy to point her out with her hot pink fellow toes. So I think she was known as the hot pink toes lady in one of the races we did. So that's become her alias. But kind of fun to see your teammate working in a different group. Her group was a little bit larger and it looked pretty organized, but I can't see
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, no, they were working hard. They basically were fighting for second place. I think they had either 2 or 3 women fighting for second place, maybe even 4, and they were mixed in with like 4 guys, that 3 or 4 guys also that were just like trying to get back to the peloton. So yeah, they had a pretty good group going for a while, and I was shouting at them too, and they were rotating pretty good as well. Yeah, so I think they did a good job. The only difference is theirs was a little more competitive, of course, because they were fighting for high positions, and the guys were fighting to get back to the group, which they're not going to catch the main group, but still they're in like fairly high places. So and their pace was a little hotter, so sometimes someone gets popped and just falls off the out of their group.
So here we go again, the U-turn that was just so hard to wait.
Well, let's see how you do.
Too early.
Just slightly though, but that's the part. Yeah, so that's the part there, how you turn too much. You have to
Yeah.
stop turning sooner. and, stand the bike up sooner, let it go ahead and drift to the outside, and you can already get back to pedaling again. As the tighter you turn, the hard, you can't pedal yet, or you have to soft pedal.
Mhm. And I think the road was much better on the left side.
This is when you guys, I think, pick up a third rider.
Okay. So, yeah,
Are you good downhill?
I was asking, like, are you off the back, because you don't exactly know what the place is. So I was like, well, hey, hop on if you can. And then this might have been a fourth rider that we
Hmm.
got.
Yeah, he was the one I think that was trying to bridge earlier, so he probably just went out too hard and popped
Okay.
himself.
And so it seemed like we had a little work going for a second, but then when one of them came by, one of the larger riders that we picked up, the two of them were a little bit bigger than Jackie and myself, and they just, um, there was too big of a gap going downhill. And then Jackie was nice and waited for me up the hill because I think we had our rhythm going that we
Yeah.
were at least knew about.
Well,
So,
and this is one of those cases, honestly, because technically he can't work with you guys. The UC, I forgot what he was. He might have been UCSD.
oh, because he wasn't lapped.
Yeah, he wasn't lapped. He was lapping you. So even though he fell back, and if he stays behind you guys, he's on the same lap technically as you are to a degree because he's behind
Okay.
you. But really, he can't get any assistance from you, and that might be also why he just decided to pull away with the other guy.
Okay.
Yeah, see, he's not on the same lap as you. He's lapped you guys.
Okay. And that was what I wasn't sure about because I was asking, like, but I guess off the back isn't lapped. I should have asked, are you lapped?
Yes, he's just thinking he's off the back of the peloton,
Yes.
but he's on the lead lap still.
Yeah,
and you
so-
see how much faster they are.
Yes.
They are on the lead lap, and technically they can't work with you anyway.
Were both of them on the lead lap?
I'm not sure. Probably because the guy in white looks like he came from behind you guys, so he was just lapping you at that time. They just were off the back. They were just not on the peloton, so they lapped you.
No, the guy in white we caught.
Okay, so he's probably lapped, and the other guy is for sure off the front. Like he's
Okay.
in a lapping you. He lapped you guys already.
Okay.
But again, in that type of situation, it's impossible for them two guys to know if they're lapped or not.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's just how it ended up.
Well, and I think, Jackie and I had a established working together relationship, so it was comfortable to not add too
Yeah.
much because it actually is a lot more challenging to work with someone.
Yeah, and if you see
Than you
right here,
think.
the guy in white is dropped again.
Yep.
So, yes, you guys caught him. The
Yeah.
other guy's on the front.
And we did start to work again with him, and then he, I think, at the hill said, "Go on, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done." So I mean, so that is something too. If you can go a more consistent effort, it's something I was working on this week. I had one interval session of 30 by 30s, and worked on not spiking the power as much and trying to
Correct.
hold it more consistent and shifting more, which I don't really like to shift a lot. I'd rather just be able to be in the right gear.
Yeah, that is
Um,
another thing too. I am a USA Cycling certified coach. So if you're looking for some coaching, yeah, send me a message on Instagram at @afasterme, and yeah, we could hook you up as well.
And that is who coaches me. So the 30 by 30s this week felt a lot easier than they did last week. I think I had a couple sessions, I don't know, my weeks are kind of running together, but they were pretty hard and I had a pretty significant spike in power. So even though my numbers at the end, if you looked at them, were about the same, the effort of what it felt like when you have a little more consistent power effort versus a harder spike. And so that's what probably happened to that rider in white. He had a much higher power spike and then you die versus, being able
Yes.
to go at kind of a threshold steady effort feels a lot easier.
Yeah, so like that's one of the things. Like earlier, you said you were in anaerobic, but technically you said you were in VO2, but technically you're in anaerobic. So we're not going to do.
What's the difference?
So anaerobic is more at the top of your range. Like when you sprint, that's anaerobic.
Mm-hmm.
There's no 5-minute sprints,
Right.
right? Sprinting is typically around 30 seconds or less. Anything more than that is not in a sprint, it's an attack. anaerobic obviously means without oxygen. So if you think of like VO2, you can do a VO2 interval sessions at 5 minutes a clip or so, right? So you can hold your VO2 power for 5 minutes. You cannot hold anaerobic power for 5 minutes. You can hold it 10 seconds, 30 seconds, stuff like that. And even 30 seconds is a lot again for anaerobic power.
And you kind of corrected my VO2 to anaerobic because I was doing 300 or 400 watts
Correct.
that I cannot sustain for any longer
No.
than probably
You
less
might,
than a minute.
yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
but when you're doing like, being right now, your FTP's around, I don't know, 205, maybe 210, something like
200, I
that.
think.
It's
200.
more than that because you did 203 in this race alone. So, but let's just say it's 205. So if you're doing 220, you're in VO2. You know, if you're doing 280 something, you're probably moving into anaerobic already. I'm not looking at numbers, so I don't have your exact range in front of me. But yeah, you're not gonna be doing 300 plus watts and still be in VO2. You're definitely in your anaerobic system.
Well, and I have to say, I really like a long, steady threshold effort. And so races when I'm off the back, hopefully one day I'll see how it is off the front to be able to just do a long, steady effort. That's kind of a comfort zone for me. The
Stay
inconsistent.
wide. Oh, such a much better turn if you would have just stayed wide and not turned real tight.
I think I know why it is. The road is a little beat up over there.
Don't matter. Don't matter. I mean, I've done this race
Yes.
too. Yeah, you
But I
just go
think
wide there.
that's-
You'll hold much more speed. You don't want to go down to 5 miles per hour if you can be at 10 miles per hour.
I think that's why.
I think it's more so that you know the inside of the course is shorter and that you want to be on the inside, so you get there immediately instead of gradually.
Letting myself, just the bike take you there
Correct.
naturally.
So right now, if you were on the white line over there, you didn't widen the course anymore actually because you took the turn with more momentum. So that's still faster for you. Now as the course veers to the left here, you can, just like at Roger Milliken when we were talking about straight lining the turns, like you don't need to turn with the road here. You can straight line it here. And so like even where you're at now, you should be drifting to the right to the corner
And
of that
look,
curve.
there I go.
Exactly. This is obviously you learned since Roger Milliken. So that's how you can straight line the course, and it's gradual. You don't have to, when you do that U-turn, you're setting up that wide entry so you can have a fast exit, but you're negating that by turning so tight and hugging the double yellow, which kills all your speed.
Yeah. So maybe a combination of that and the beat up portion of the road. Because there was a couple pieces in here that the road was not so great.
Yeah, but it's those sealer strips there. It's not like actual potholes or anything. It's just sealer strip, and that's just how they kind of repair the road in a cheap kind of way instead of having to re-slurry it or lay asphalt down again.
Yeah, there was a couple on the other side, a few uneven pavement things also that if you're not paying attention could, cause you to jump on your seat a little bit.
It's kind of cool water tower. I just saw a water tower. It's kind of a cool water tower. If it wasn't so windy here all the time, this would actually be a really nice race. But honestly, it's a really tough race. One of our teammates did it, Jack O, for the first time today, and he was kind of surprised at how tough it is.
Yeah, it is a pretty brutal course. Honestly, today was about the nicest the conditions have ever been, except for the cold. But while you're racing, it's not bad. It's while you're sitting around after watching, and probably with you were spectating it. It is painful.
Yeah, I mean it was. You can see right now. You started the race at 48 degrees. It's 43 degrees now. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean the snow melted, of course, from last week. But just around the corner, we're at the foothills of like Lytle Creek right here, just at the corner, and you only need to go up like a mile, and there's like a bunch of snow up there.
I think I do a little bit better job let myself go wide on that corner.
Yeah, the only thing is, same thing here where the guy is in blue, that's where you should be. And you shouldn't come back to the yellow line until the road starts to bend. So when it bends to the left, that's when you should be using the double yellow as an apex and kind of hitting the double yellow. And then as the road bends back to the right, you should be straight lining it to the right curb again. It's just basically, like in theory, basically you want to keep your bike as straight as possible, and you want to always go as straight as you can, no matter if the road's turning or not. If you're able, even if the road was like a tight snake, like an S, sometimes people don't realize you can actually just ride straight down the middle of that S. You know, like make the S into a one stripe dollar sign, you know? But most people will turn with the curves of the S, and it will slow you down.
Good job.
Always things to learn.
Yeah, and
things to improve at.
when it's a big road like this, it's deceptive
Hmm.
because you don't think of it as I need to be here or there. And it's only cutting like X amount of feet per lap. It's just when you do 20 miles of it, next thing you know, you would have done like, you know, 600, let's say 600 feet less or 1,000 feet less. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you're adding 10 feet, 15 feet, 20, 30 feet a lap or whatever, ends up being 300 feet at the end of the race.
Yeah, here is this hill. This is the last couple laps. I think Jackie and I both went to small gear to just spin up it. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, he has a pretty slow cadence going right there, and I mean yours is in the 70s, but
Man, I'm doing 300 watts.
yeah, and it looks like he has a cadence of like in the 60s right there. But
He was standing though, also.
oh, I know, and I think maybe it's because too he's pulling you right now.
Hmm.
You know, he wasn't like I said, he gets kind of like separated on the turns and on the fast part of the downhill, but then he catches back up and he obviously easily pulls away on these flats. I mean, on the slight inclines.
Yeah, I did ask him. I think we had 2 laps to go. I said, "Do you want to just work together the whole race and fist bump across the line,
Yeah.
or you want to race?" And he was good with working together the last lap too.
Well,
so.
this is basically your last lap. You guys are a lap down, but that's another thing with road races. Actually, it's the same with crit races as well. Road race, crit race, circuit race. When the winners or the leaders pass the finish line, typically if you're lapped, your race is over as well, and they will still score you in your same position.
Yeah, so I just actually pulled up next to him, and that's what I was asking him, and he goes, "We have another lap." Yeah, I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, about 1.5 more," but I think it turns out that this is it because the peloton is coming behind us, so they just said we were done. So
Yeah.
we actually did 2 less laps than the main group, just because we were, I guess, close to getting lapped for a second time.
Well, I don't even think it's that. It's just that they want to get people off the course instead of everyone finishing. And there's some people that are lapped twice. So you don't want to try to keep track of how many times someone got lapped and let them finish the full 10 laps. A little bit better turn for you here. And as you can see, this is the widest you went. You carried more speed. You're at 11 miles per hour through the turn. So that was a lot better. And this is the only thing I'm saying here. You don't have to pull to the left so soon. Just gradually pull to the left and keep your momentum going.
I was disappointed to not have one more lap to go, though.
Yeah.
When you're out there to kind of work hard, you want to get that full workout in.
Yeah.
I wasn't too disappointed to have the one less lap to go after
Yeah.
getting lapped, but when you kind of prepare, you just want to have maybe at least be able to finish hard or a little bit harder. But there's the peloton coming, so they're coming into their finish right now.
Yeah. So you know what? I didn't see the 2 riders off the front pass you guys again. Do they pass you here? Because the peloton was there and the 2 riders were like at least a minute in front. Oh, there they go. Nope, that's not. Oh yeah, that is them. That's the 2 riders there. Oh wait. Okay, that looks weird. I don't know who those guys are. The one guy looks like I didn't see the
So maybe
UC
somebody
Davis guy.
had bridge. Maybe that guy did bridge up.
No, he didn't. The UCLA guy was there the whole time. So maybe the guy in front. Maybe I just didn't see his kit. But his UC Davis in like a either dark blue or black kit. He wasn't the guy on the back though. There wasn't 3 of them. There's only 2 of them. So
Maybe he jumped in and was working with him. I don't
maybe
know.
I don't really know either, to be honest with you. I just know the 2 guys off the front, and they had the sprint out for the win, and the UCLA guy ends up edging them at the line. I think he gets them by a bike link, to be honest with you. But yeah, it was very competitive, and they're both very strong riders. Also, congrats to Anya, Emmy, and Marlena for being on the box. and they all raced great. And Anya raced really well, just staying. She was, like I said, she was like maybe top 15 of the entire race.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, we are coming up to the end. We'll be, the official tells us our race is over, and we, kind of get a turnaround, introduce ourselves, and then you'll kind of see in the background the unfortunate crash that happened right at the finish line.
Yeah.
I would say the nice thing is both riders were able to finish and be placed,
Yeah.
and unfortunately deal with the aftermath of the accident. So
Yeah.
thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you at the Majestic tomorrow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. They actually crashed and flew like across the line. They actually crashed going across the finish
Okay.
line. So
We're done,
hopefully both
Jackie.
of them are all right. You're actually not going to see it because I think by now the ads for the next videos are going to be up. I don't think I'm going to actually show that video. I'll look at the footage and see if it's worth showing or not.
Oh no. Oh. Ellen. Jackie, nice to meet you.